I've gone to haunted houses and people are like, "Hey, my house is haunted," and I'll be like, "Hey, can I go hang out at your house for a minute?"
Welcome to Creative Ups, a podcast for creative people.
Hey everybody, Christopher Talon, author, musician, podcast host, sexy bald guy. All right, so I said I would have the next installment of the Mike Salt interview out last week, and then, the terrible thing happened at Michigan State, and that one hit kind of close to home to me in a literal sense because my parents still live in the town that borders East Lansing, where Michigan State is. So, I didn't really feel like putting out a podcast last week because of all of that. So, here is part 2 of the podcast that started 2 weeks ago with Mike Salt. And we talk about more writer stuff. We left off last time talking about social media, and now we kind of talk about what we're working on now, future projects, and just some writing stuff. So, enjoy this one, part 2 with Mike Salt. I'm sure you'll hear him on the podcast again at some point. Good guy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Still thinking a lot about what happened last week. Just, think about that. If all the people that you love, let them know that you love them. Just because you never know what's going to go on, man. You never know. But, yeah. So, here's part 2 of Mike Salt's interview. That are listening that have not put out a book and are thinking about it, plan the hell out of your pre-release, because like Mike just said, I think maybe somewhere between like 30 and 40% of my total sales, or for sure online sales, came in like that first month.
Yeah. And then as it's starting to teeter down, you want to be able to release that next book. And if you haven't planned ahead, like, you're not going to be ready. And there are some strategies you could do. Some authors do another edition and they release that edition, and the complete, like, if you have fans that are completionists, they'll be like, I want that cover, or I want that extra chapter that you included at the end, or I wanted the short story you included, so they'll buy the extra copies and stuff like that. And like, I'm not going to lie, I've done similar ideas just to try to get people, keep it relevant.
I mean, why not? That's what the big guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I've done emails like, hey, if you follow me on my email, I'll send you a chapter that is a deleted scene. A chapter that I couldn't fit in the book I wanted to, but here it is. You'll be able to read it.
Yeah.
And like, there's these little tricks, but like, yeah, it's all about that momentum of it, and like, just trying to catch it at the right time and just carrying it through. So not everybody can have the time to release a book a year. Some people take a couple years and I know that if I had to do that, I would fade away. I'd have to start over every single time I wrote a book.
Yeah. I want to write, because my book, I'm trying to think, is like 320 something pages. The one I'm writing now is going to be probably at least 300 pages. But I want to dip into that world of short stories or novellas because, like you said, they don't take as long to write. But it seems like people are moving back towards shorter stuff away from like super long stuff again. Because for a long time they said short stories were not, there was no money in them. But now, like
there is, yeah.
Brandon Scott and Jill Girardi and a few other people are in what is it, Gates of Hell or 25 Gates of Hell or something like that. And that's been like an Amazon bestseller for months now.
Well, like, you're right. Like, it's all about it's about the market, really. Like, it used to be like there's no money in short stories, and there probably really isn't. But what it is that it gives you your name. Like people can see you're writing,
Yeah.
and they might be like, I like that story. What else do they got? And it gets you in front of people, and that's what's really important is just people seeing you write and enjoying your writing, and then being interested enough to take that next step, which is to follow you or to find out what else you have published.
Yeah.
And I don't write short stories. I've tried. I've sent 3 or 4 short stories to publishers. I mean, to anthologies, and I always get denied. And it's just because they're not good. My stories I submit, they're not good.
There's a real talent to brevity in storytelling like that.
The people that can do it consistently or that enjoy it, I have so much respect for. It's just not me. I can't.
I'm with you. I feel like if I have a really good idea, it should be a novel. You know what I mean?
Well, take my House on Harlan book that I released 2 years ago. It was originally a short story. I published it in the local magazine in 2017 or 2018, and it did. I put it on Amazon as at 99 cents ebook. And it never, ever sold, like maybe 1 or 2 a year, and I hated the story. I love the story. I hated what was released, though.
Yeah.
There's only 3,000 words. There was more to it. I knew that there was more to it. I took that same story, fleshed it out over 30,000 words, and I love that story. It's the same backbone, the same skeletal structure, but it's fleshed out. It went in a direction I did not expect. Like I was talking about, I need to have an ending in mind when I write a story. That ending was at like 24,000 words.
Yeah. And
I still had 8,000 to 10,000 more words that I knew was still in the book. So that ending actually was spontaneous. It just kept going, but I think you're right. When it comes to like novellas, like I love writing a novella. First of all, like you said, it's easier, it's faster. It's not easier. I mean, but it is faster, to get that pumped out.
I mean, just logistically, 30,000 words thereabout versus 70,000 words thereabout.
Yeah, it just logically you can write that faster, right?
Yeah.
But also I find that a lot of people enjoy my the shorter books, the novellas, 32,000. Those get picked up more because people want a weekend read. They're going to go to a family holiday. They want a book ready for them when the weather's not good outside and they want to just read a book in a weekend, and people just pick them up just because they want it. Like some people don't want to read I know that personally, if a book's over 500 pages, it's going to sit on my shelf longer.
Yeah.
I want the satisfaction of completing a book. And sometimes I'll pick up a novella that's less than 100 pages, and I'm like, I've got time to read this. Let's just pump this out real quick,
Yeah.
And so, I love writing a novella. I don't, I'll write the occasional novel, or I have aspirations to write longer books. But even as an author, I want this book to be as best as it can be. And if it happens to be 32,000 pages when it's done, then that's how much words I had in me,
Yeah.
And so
you got to serve the story, not your word count.
Yeah. And I hate when people are like, well, I want this book to be 75,000 words. And I'm like, well, how many do you have right now? And they're like, nothing. It's just, I know that's what I'm going to hit. And I'm like, you don't know that.
Yeah.
You don't know that until you start writing. And if you do, you're forcing those words.
Yeah.
And your editor, if it's a good editor, is going to cut out 20,000 of those words anyway. So no, don't do that. Write the book that needs to be told.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I know people that have written, there's like 150,000 words, and I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like you could break that into 2 parts. Like, stop. Like, but I guess everybody has their own way. So
yeah, it was weird with Switchers. Once I was probably, I don't know, closing in on halfway on it, I would just started getting like very specifically, like, I think I know almost exactly how many pages this is going to finish out to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like once you hit that halfway mark, there is a little switch in your brain that says like, I got like 4 chapters left in this book. I know I do.
Yeah.
And if I average this many pages per chapter, like, I can get this book wrapped up by that time.
Yeah.
It is fun though.
Yeah. I think I originally thought my book would be like 325 pages. and then it ended up being like 330 or something like that. So
Damn,
I was like,
damn, that's
pretty close.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would have been shorter,
Yeah.
but some cool people that helped me out, other writers, read it and were like, this part at the ending doesn't quite make sense here. And so I went back there and made it a little bit longer because I was trying to jam everything in, and they're like, no, you need to pull that out a little bit more. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like when somebody's jumping into a book for the first time, you should rely on people. Like you need to have somebody whispering in your ear,
Oh man,
this doesn't make sense,
Yeah, if it wasn't
Like-
for Marcella, Brandon Scott, Jennifer Susie, those guys, my book would have, I'm not going to say it would have been terrible, but it would have not been smooth like
it wouldn't have the same impact.
Yeah. And TJ Tranchel, of course, he was my editor, but the other guys read it for free. No offense, TJ.
I want to write a time travel horror book.
Yay.
And because, dude, like time travel is my favorite by far science fiction genre.
So many ways
Like,
to
if
so
there's
many
a-
ways to do it.
And I love, man, I like, time loops. I love like, just flat point blank, Back to the Future, Looper, just anything in time travel. They're all so, unique and fun.
Yeah.
And I want to write a horror version of it. So what advice do you give me as, you've written a time travel book?
Yeah.
Where the biggest hurdle for me is the grandfather paradox. And I think I worked a way around that.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing is how to keep it, how do I make it make sense by the end of it? Because you want to be able to make it start like you knew what you're doing the entire goddamn time.
Yeah.
And I figured this is my chance to talk to somebody that knows a thing or two about time travel.
Well,
And how do you go away with the science? How do you go around? How do you navigate around the science where your readers aren't going to be like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about?
that's that. So towards the end of my book, in one of the scenes that kind of builds up to the big climactic scene, they're like, okay, we got to figure out when this is going to happen. We've got some really smart math people that are going to do this. And what I had them do was like basically all the really smart people walked away from all the like normal people to go figure it out. And the story was told
And they
from the
came back with a
perspective of
solution?
like the most normal guy, basically, and so they're sitting there like, God, what are those guys even talking about over there? Well, they're trying to solve it. Well, how come we don't get it? Because we don't know any better. Like, well, I do. It's like, dude, you failed algebra. Like, so they're having that conversation while the important conversation is being had. So the important conversation is being had, but you can kind of
behind the scenes.
like, yeah, you can kind of sidestep the actual like really hard science that way. But I read it just a lot of hypothetical time travel stuff until I was like, ooh, that's the way I'm going to go, just on the time travel part of it. But yeah, like you said, there's grandfather paradox, there's time loops, there's mine's more of like the many worlds. Anytime you do something that starts a separate
Yeah.
timeline rather than impacting the
Yeah.
one you started on. But yeah, I would say, yeah, just do as much like hypothetical research as you can on it. And then Brandon Scott said it to me on the podcast. He said like 80% of the research that you do will never make it into the book.
Oh, 100%. Right.
And so I've had one or two people say like, you wrote about this pretty convincingly. How did you do that? And I just read until like I started going, okay, I already know these things that I'm coming over again and again.
I'm once again reading the same sentence again. Yeah.
Yes. And then once you get to that point, then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna, merge what little bits of smartness I can into the way that I dumb talk.
And that's why you have to have that everyman character.
Yeah.
So that you can have somebody, hey, because your reader probably is just in the same ballpark. They don't know the math.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. When you're
that's been the hardest part for me.
yeah, my character being a first person character helps with that a lot, because you kind of accept like, oh, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now, but it's kind of happening to us right now rather than,
Yeah.
how are we going to turn the ship around? Well, first we have to do this and this, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And as
That's not a
writing
helpful answer,
horror,
I realize now.
no, it actually does. Like writing horror, I don't write first person.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't feel like there's no scare. Like the reader knows this person's telling the story.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be he's not going to die. He or she's will live at least till the ending. If if it's a first person story. So all my stories are outside of that, and I can kill anybody whenever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
And I have a story where the main character dies in this third chapter, and it should if it lands, the readers kind of are always like unexpected. Like now all of a sudden their view of the story shifts. That's not the main character. Is there a main character? Who's safe?
Yeah.
But I can't do that with the first person narrative.
Yeah.
But the thing that's holding back from my time travel story has been the science. How do I sit them down in the room and explain the science for the everyman? That I understand the theories, but I don't understand math. So maybe that is the route I need to take. Maybe I just need to have the main characters just be like, I'm too dumb for this. They can crunch the numbers and we can just go.
Yeah.
I think that might be the way I need to go with it, because that's been holding me up. I have the outline. I have what I know needs to happen, but I'm stuck there in the science.
Well, I feel like movies do that a lot too. Maybe that's where I stole it from. It's like, the main character who we've been following this whole time, you stall these guys while I go do the science thing. Like, and then you follow him and like, how much longer? And you just see the scientist over his shoulder. I just need another minute, like
just on the keyboard, just pressing buttons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then you see a cursor loading at like 45%, 65%. And you're like, oh, so something's happening and it's loading. But I get it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and it's not really a twist because I start the book by saying the book starts out when you know you're about to die and your last thought is dash next line. No, that's not the right way to start this. So it's first person, but you're like, oh, he's gonna die.
Where it's going to go to,
or at least you think he's gonna die, because
what it drives to. And also, and that's what I like about time travel, and that's what I want to play around with is, like you can kill a character, and then the character exists the next chapter, and it is like, and that's the part that I hate about time travel that I also love. Like, for the most part, like my favorite. Let's roll back for a second to my love for comic books. My favorite DC character is the Flash. And I love the Flash, and I love his arcs and all that stuff. But once you introduce time travel, the stakes become meaningless. Like if these 4 or 5 characters die, and he can just run backwards and be like, "Nah, let's just stop them from dying, and we're good." Then there's no stakes anymore.
Well, that's why I have my characters specifically say more than once, well, yeah, but this isn't like Back to the Future time travel, because
it's branching timeline. So like there is repercussions. You left a universe where those people are dead to come back to them and save them in this universe where they don't die. That the multiverse theory, and all that stuff. And I think that Endgame kind of did that fine. I thought that was kind of fun how they did their interpretation of time travel, where they're just kind of like plucking seeds and like replacing them. It's fun. But when it comes down to a lot of time travel, just kind of like ignores the fact that the existence of time travel makes everything behind it like meaningless. Like you lose a lot of the suspense off it. So when a movie does it right and does it well, it makes it interesting, and like butterfly effect and all these things. Like that's what I'm drawn to, and I want to make that when I do write one, that it is. All these kinks are worked out. I want to make it a character's death means something. Maybe the next chapter, 3 chapters from now, the character comes back, but everything is different. You corrupted the timeline, and this person is not the same person. And you deal with the whole entire idea of like, this person's alive now, but he is still technically dead, just not here.
Blake Crouch does that great with oh god, what book was that? Was it Recursion? No. You ever read Blake Crouch?
No, I have not.
He's got a book that does many worlds, things like that. And it's like, you get out, you do something, totally fucks it up. You go back in, you try to fix it, like over and over again, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I read I didn't know it was a time travel book till the ending, which I was really excited when I'm like, oh, time travel, didn't see it coming. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But it ended in I can't remember the name of it. And it takes place in the Arctic, and it's a really fun sci-fi horror. And I just been waiting for somebody else to share it online.
Yeah.
Just so I could be like, I have somebody to talk to about this book. Because that ending, I had to reread it like 3 or 4 times because like, no, that's not how they ended it. Like, and it just like, I want somebody else to read it just so I could be like, did he make the right choice? Like, it's about branching timelines, and it's about like, like leaving your timeline to be on a separate timeline, but the people you're abandoning in your timeline, like they're left without you. And like, it just, the choice that he leaves, it just blew me. I was just like, I feel like personally it was the wrong choice the character made, but like I need somebody to bounce this off of. Like, that's the kind of story I want to write, where you're like,
Yeah.
I could see both ways this has to end, and neither of them are good choices.
I feel like that's a good ending. Just that it sticks with you that much. You know what I mean? Some people go,
I
well,
still
it's
think
not the
about.
most
I don't remember the name
satisfying,
of it,
but it doesn't always have to be the most satisfying. Sometimes it's the most haunting.
Yeah, and it resonates. Like, yeah, sure. I don't remember the actual name of the book in this moment. It's sitting in my bookshelf, but I think about that ending quite often.
Yeah.
It has resonated with me for the last couple of years, and I think that may have actually sparked like, hey, I need to actually write my time travel story. It is my favorite science fiction genre. Like, I need to fucking just do it,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the book that I'm writing currently is not my time travel story because A, I haven't talked to you yet to get your advice, and B, I have another story I want to tell right now. It has to do with the theory of back rooms. You heard of the back room theory?
I don't know that I have.
It's just like it's a newer creepypasta thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's just the idea of you stumble across a parallel universe, and the parallel universe is just empty rooms, and it's familiar. It feels familiar. It smells familiar. You feel like you've been here before, but you haven't. And there's nobody in these rooms, and it's just like empty offices or empty, play yards. It feels eerie because there should be somebody there, but it's not. You're being hunted by something that is watching you. And I stumbled across it on the interweb, and I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, yep, I need to write. This story is just itching in my brain now. So that's where I've focused all my energy to writing right now. So that's where I'm currently at. And it's fun. It's not time travel per se, but it is a parallel universe.
Yeah.
That in itself is fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I say that about mine too, that my book, I don't want people to think of me as a science fiction writer, because even though it's science fiction, the time travel is really secondary to like
the drama.
The kids and the adults, their adult selves, all want to be in 1996 because the future is terrible, but only one side can be in one place. They can't both be in the safe place. So it's not really about time traveling to stop this or to change this. It's about just trying to get home.
Right. It is just a journey,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And that's the thing. I've kind of made not a name for myself, but I've definitely, the fans that I do have, the people that do consistently buy my books or constantly reviewing or commenting, they like horror.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't jump straight into a sci-fi book because they don't read sci-fi.
They would if you wrote it, though.
Maybe.
Don't handcuff yourself too much to what people expect from you either,
Precisely. I agree to that. I do love writing horror, and I think I'll probably write horror better than I would write science fiction. So I need to, walk that line of, it's only science fiction, but I have to dump horror into it, mainly because I know I want to.
Well, I mean, you're you, so
also,
your style is going to bleed through no matter what the genre is.
Right. I don't want, but if I go off and I write like a romance thriller, I feel like I don't have the skill sets for that. It's funny. I have like a notebook full of like just stories that I want to write, and one of them's like a Holocaust, like World War II story, and I'm like, I don't see a scenario where I actually write this. Like, maybe I'll make it a short story. Like, I like the idea and I like the story, but like,
maybe
I don't see myself.
Maybe a paranormal romance like the Dan Aykroyd getting BJ from the Ghost and Ghostbusters.
Yeah, Ghostbusters. It actually there was a World War II Holocaust story, and it is a romance story, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be writing this, but it's a fun. The story itself is fun.
Yeah,
but I don't like. That's probably not me, if we're being honest. And like, you don't hold yourself to like your genre, like you're saying, but like my expectations for myself really is to not jump genres.
Yeah.
Stephen King can do it. Like, Stephen King has written obviously horror, but then all of a sudden he'll have Green Mile, and he'll have Shawshank, and he'll have.
But there's a real
The Body.
There's a real visceral darkness to everything that he writes. Even
he has that voice still that
Yeah.
Whether it's horror or not, it's still him writing.
You feel like you're standing over a trapdoor no matter what you're reading.
I'm not Stephen King, so I don't know if I could pull that off. Yeah, maybe someday I'll actually write a straight up sci-fi, but time travel, a horror time travel seems within my grasp at this time.
Yeah.
It's something I know I can attain. So,
Well, if you ever want to bounce ideas off me too, then yeah, man, let me know. I got a special place for all the guests on the show, but especially the writers, because we do the same thing. We can bounce ideas off each other and all that.
Yeah, you will probably be getting not only questions from me when I write my time travel, but you're going to have to be a beta reader. I'm sorry, you're going to have to be at this point. So.
I was just like asking everybody, hoping some people would say yes, and then all of a sudden most of them started saying yes, and I was like, okay, well, I can't have everybody that I asked on here, so I gotta cool it and be a little bit more specific from now on.
It's probably best that it took me this long to get on, because I have so much more experience than I did before. It would have just been, the conversation probably would have been different,
Well, same. I've only been in the world of published writers for 6 months now, 6-7 months.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it how far are you into your next book then?
I have about 75 pages done. They're done. I've edited them after I've written them, because that's usually what I do is I'll print out get to about 75 pages on a Word document, 75 pages, and then I'll print that out, go over it all by hand, go over all the corrections on the computer, do the next 75, and I do it that way, which isn't the fastest because I also write by hand.
Oh my God. Jesus.
If I don't write by hand though, I get, like I said, I have pretty bad ADD, and that connection with the thing in my hand, making something where it didn't used to be, and no red lines and blue lines and autofills, and you know what I mean? That, my brain just can't handle it.
Yeah, I use a Neo 2, a little word processor that doesn't connect to the internet, and I can write in bed. I can write in the porch. Yeah, it's so, and I have my phone connected to music, but my phone is inside.
Yeah,
so I'm not distracted by my phone. I'm not distracted by the internet. I understand the idea of just turning everything off, but writing by hand is fucking insane.
I know.
Okay.
It is. It's terribly insane. I'd probably be almost done with the book if I just wrote it on the computer. But
yeah, probably.
It
slows you down. Yeah.
I wrote on the computer. I was like, I could be doing this so much faster when I was writing switchers. And so I probably started the second act where I was like, I'll just do it on the computer. Got 85 give or take pages written, read it, and I was like, this is all shit. I just threw them away and started it over by hand again.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate that feeling when you have a couple chapters and you go back and you read it and you're like, oh, none of this can stay.
Yeah. And I just kept going I'm a good writer, I'll figure it out. And then I just got to a point where I was like, no, I got to start over.
Yeah, and that's such a heart-wrenching. I save all that stuff. Like I said, I send it to my email, people with my email list, and I'll be like, hey, here's a sneak peek of something that didn't happen. It's a deleted scene, or how things original scene was supposed to go.
Here's 80 pages of meandering prose.
Yeah, I'm not as I've lost because of internet connection. I have lost about 100 pages before, and that just takes all the wind out of your sail.
For me, I always find that it's strange how much, when I'm trying to write something, I'll remember how much I wrote.
Yeah,
because sometimes I'll be typing something out that I wrote, and then I'll go, oh, you know what needs to say next is this. And then I'll look at the paper and it says exactly that. I'm like, oh, whoops.
Yeah. That's the thing that sucked. When I lost that, it was 80 something pages, almost 100. My computer I had a shitty laptop and it just glitched. I wasn't using Google Docs, which auto saves,
Yeah.
I had a Microsoft Word, and it glitched. Something happened. And, I had transferred pages that I'd written on another document over, and then when it glitched, it deleted the original copy and it didn't save the current copy. Ooh. And I just lost everything. And I tried to do, I'm rewriting and trying to see what I could remember. And then I maybe got like 15, 20 pages into it and went, it's gone. You know,
Yeah.
everything that would have happened in this story is gone now. And I actually pressed save, and I've never opened it since. Like, it took all the wind out of my sail.
Oh,
that story is just
does
sitting there.
suck.
I'll write it someday, maybe, but yeah, it's for me, it's dead to me right now.
And maybe that's actually a good thing. Maybe it'll be one of those things that, like, when you're like very advanced and deep into your career, you'll look back at it and go, you know what?
Now I'm writing,
that should have happened that way, because I'm better at writing now than I was when I started, and I can do more with this idea.
Yeah, and I still love the idea. I just haven't gotten back to it. It's about an island, and these crab fishermen are they're stranded at sea, and they end up finding their way to the island, and then they figure out the island is not what they thought, and it's not connected, just connected to basically hell, and it is just the worst possible place. And I was having fun writing it.
I'm gonna say that sounds dope. I'd like to check it out.
Yeah, and it was like it's not like a tropical island like Lost. It's like a Pacific Northwest island next to Alaska, so it's kind of snowy, it's cold, there's pine trees and shit. It's a different environment than you're used to in an island, and they're cold, and they're trying to figure out a way to survive. And they see in the distance, they see that a second island has a small flame, so they know there's life on that island. And what does that mean for this island? And I wrote and I was having fun with it too. And it has time loops, and and a lot of stuff that I saw from other horror things that I really loved, the tropes, and I wanted to take my own spin on the tropes. And I want to get back to it, but even when I think about it now, all that work I had lost is just a kick to the balls, and I just can't go back to it.
Yeah.
So someday, maybe.
Yeah. Do you ever have periods from when you finished your first book to now where you're just in that rare spot where you're not working on anything and you're like, what am I going to do next? Or do you pretty much kind of have some kind of a seed forming by the time you're really wrapping something else up?
Yeah, I have, off the top of my head, I have 9 books that I know I want to write.
Well, there you go.
And I have the beginning and I have the end for them. Right. And they're sitting there on my phone as, like, here's the premise, here's where it's going to go. And then I just have a collection of these stories. And unfortunately, like a moron, when I finish writing, I go, okay, those will be there. What else do I have that I could brew up? Like,
you think it's a security thing where you're like, just in case I ever do run out of ideas, I've got these ones in reserve.
It's a draft. It's like when you save your draft.
Yeah.
And it's a draft for writing in the future. Like, well, and I don't have a good enough idea. Maybe I'll just pull out the dust off this cover and give it a shot. I don't know. I know I'm going to work on those. One of those will be the next book I write, called The Treehouse, and I know that that's the next where I'm going. But this idea I'm talking about with the back rooms, it was something that just literally came out of nowhere. I actually was planning on writing something about a cult. And my wife loved the idea, and she's like, let's do this. And I'm like, I love everything I'm saying, the words, it's great. I want to do this. And then I even pitched it to a publisher, and they said, go write it. And I said, yes. And then this backrooms thing put me down a fucking rabbit hole, and the scary, everything, the environment and the momentum of the story. And I'm like, the cult thing is also going to be put in the back burner, put it as a draft, throw it aside. And now I have to do this because it's just overwhelmingly telling me I have to write it.
Well, maybe we'll talk some more off air, and you can pick my brain on some of the things that I've learned about time travel and writing science for stupid people, myself included. And I'll pick your brain on cult stuff, because I just got done telling somebody else too. I'm at a spot in my book now where I'm like, man, I'm not seeing very far down the road right now. You know what I mean? It's all just one step at a time. And that causes anxiety for me, not like lose my mind anxiety, just like, man, let's hurry up and get this through this part. But the main bad guy is a cult leader, and I'm trying to really immerse myself into cult stuff so that I can write about it with some authenticity. Because that's where I'm at right now, is I just don't feel like I can write enough about it to where somebody who maybe has experience would be like, oh yeah, this dude's legit. He knows what he's kind of talking about. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's a different feeling when you read a book and you know that the author has immersed himself into the environment, you know,
Yeah.
and knows what it's like. I've gone to haunted houses, and people are like, "Hey, my house is haunted," and I'll be like, "Hey, can I go hang out at your house for a minute?" You know, when I'm writing my ghost story, just so I can have that environment and feeling, you know, and like, you know, I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but if I put myself in that mindset and I do, what is this? How does this feel?
Yeah.
And I've tried to put myself in situations that would give me an opinion about it, writing it. You know, I've done research when it comes to haunted houses and all that stuff, but you know, it's haunted houses. Like the research you do is only relevant to that sector of the internet, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I get that when it comes to the cult, it's like documentaries and reading books about cults and then talking to people. Like, lucky enough, I have a friend who was part of a cult, and I was able to pick her brain about it and be like, tell me about this cult, you know, and kind of, so that's kind of where that one came from.
Yeah.
You know,
I actually met somebody who worked at a coffee shop, and I said, hey, they had my book in the coffee shop, and I said, hey, will you hold this and I'll take a picture of it and say like, hey, so-and-so you can come down here and get this book. And she was like, sure. And then she was like, what are you working on now? And I told her, she's like, oh, I was in a cult when I was a kid. And I was like, really? Would you talk about it on my podcast sometime so I can like interview you for the book? And like, also that's just interesting. And she was like, yeah. So hopefully sometime in the next month or two, she'll be on the podcast where I can
pick her brain
and then also exploit it for podcast.
Hey, if she's willing to get on, that's content, man.
But yeah, no, I think like I'm mostly joking about exploiting it, but like, yeah, no, that kind of stuff is really interesting just because it really happens. You know what I mean? There's people out there that are so scientifically charismatic that they can make people do terrible, weird things.
Yeah. And
in a group,
just
in a massive group.
Yeah. And it's just so interesting how they're so charismatic and they're able to just manipulate a situation, and just people will live their word. Everything they say, it's captivating, man.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy thing to dive into. And the more you read it, it's just so tragic. Even like the ones that don't end in a Jonestown necessarily.
Yeah.
But almost none of them end well. Like there's always, it's just insane and so sad, you know?
Yeah. At best, it's everyone walks away physically healthy, but like damaged somehow, some way.
Even their psyche, man. Like their trust in people.
Which is why it makes such good fiction fuel, because it's everybody, you say like cult and immediately everyone's like, yeah. Everybody's got feelings.
Yeah, and that's what the book I was trying to write. It's a cult book and it's horror, and it was right up my alley, and it's a hot word right now. You know, cult documentaries are everywhere, and people, it's relevant and all that stuff. And I probably should be writing that one. And I like my wife loves the idea of it, and which is, you know, like I said, she kind of steers my ship, but I'll get back to it.
Say, if I keep struggling on it, maybe it'll be a 2-person book. Mike Salt, thank you so much for coming on the show and letting me talk to you and pick your brain. It was a lot of fun, man. Thanks.
Appreciate it. It was a pleasure, and I definitely want to come back. So make sure to find me a space. All right,
for sure.
And then eventually we will be so in sync. I will take over your podcast, and it will be mine. That's the plan.
Sometimes while I'm editing and trying to book guests and schedule stuff, I would be like, you know what? Maybe somebody else wants to do this. It's the talking to the people that's the fun part, man. This is the great part. So, yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Well, thank you. Bye.
All right, everybody. That was Mike Salt. That was the whole thing. You heard it all until the next time we speak. So, all right, guys, check out Mike Salt. Listen, read his books, and keep listening to the show. Love you guys. Mwah!
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Weird, right?